Are imported cars going to get cheaper? That's the first question car buyers are asking after the announcement of the India-EU FTA free trade agreement. I'm Hormazd Sorabjee.
I am Ketan Thakkar. Yes, Hormazd, there was a lot of buzz when the UK FTA had happened and a lot of prospective buyers held back purchases. The same question has come back again.
This is the mother of all deals.
Absolutely. It's the biggest, probably is going to create the biggest trading zone in the world. We're talking about 27 EU nations trading with India. So
right.
probably the biggest trading,
the
biggest trading zone in the world. But the moot point here is that prices are not likely to change at least for the next 18 months. That's for sure. The ratification of the deal is likely to happen in the Q4 of 2027. So we're still about 18 months to 24 months away from it. The first change will be seen in 2028. Duties definitely will come down. I mean, we've spoken about it before.
Duties will come down, Ketan. I think let's talk about the duties, the rate, and then we'll talk about if the prices will come down. Two separate things altogether.
Absolutely.
So I think, Ketan, 110 to 40%. That's right. The first, and then I think 2032, 10%.
That's right. That's right.
And until 2032, plug-in hybrids and EVs, no change at all. They'll be at maximum duty or whatever they're paying right now.
Absolutely. So as far as CBUs are concerned, first, for EVs and plug-in hybrids, no change whatsoever. It remains to be seen. We have to look at the fine print, whether the CKDs, which is what a lot of premium car makers are now assembling in India, if there's any change with regards to CKD.
There's talk of, CKDs at 15%. So as it is in any case, their duty structure is well below what the benefit will be on the CBUs. And there's talk of the CKD going down from 15 to around 8%.
That's right. That's right. The effective rate is somewhere around 16.5% almost. It comes down to about 8.5%. But the biggest challenge, the biggest problem has been currency. January 2025, the rupee to euro equation was for 1 euro, we were paying 89 rupees. It has gone up to 109. It has, the rupee has depreciated about 22%. And the way it is going with the FIIs going out, probably it gets further depreciated. So it kind of compensates for any benefit that the Indian consumer may potentially get. So big question mark where the rupee moves. The fear is that the rupee is further going to depreciate. And if it happens, it kind of takes away all the benefits.
Kind of absolutely just offsets any duty reduction that there will be. But, Ketan, to be honest, we've been talking a lot of manufacturers. They're going at pains to say that, look, obviously, because I think I'm talking about really at the high end.
Yes.
Let's say the really premium cars or the super luxury cars. I'm talking about Bentleys, Rolls-Royce, Porsches, Lamborghinis, all of them which only come in CBUs in very, very small volumes. They are the ones which right now are seeing, let's say, people putting their purchases on hold.
Yep.
Obviously, customers are very confused. But one thing's for sure, Ketan, that though the duties are coming down drastically, there is unlikely or there definitely won't be a corresponding drastic reduction in price.
Absolutely, Hormazd.
And for several reasons. I think one is we've got going against this is the rupee, which is depreciating. And I think people are talking about it maybe in the next 2 years, euro going down to, or rupee going down to maybe 130 to the euro and then maybe further because clearly rupee seems to be in a sort of free fall right now. There's no money, no foreign investment, foreign exchange coming in. So I think that is one kind of a, let's say, offset that there is. And I think also it'll allow, let's say, the OEMs to kind of correct their margins because I think they were selling these products on wafer-thin margins over here. Strategic pricing. Landed cost here much cheaper than what is probably in other markets.
Home markets.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, they're going to say a bit of a breather and say, hey, listen, okay, great. Let us also keep some of the benefits of this reduction in customs duty. So price might come down, but not dramatically. And again, the exchange rate might just negate everything.
Absolutely.
So while, as I said, all the OEMs are saying, no, prices cannot come down and giving all these reasons. I'm just talking about the top end CBUs. Absolutely the top sliver of imports.
Sure.
But I think, it's fair to say that clearly that there's not going to be a dramatic reduction in price. And, if you wait now, you don't know where the rupee will go. So that is also a risk.
Correct.
So there may be no, let's say, benefit at all. And I think, Ketan, what is, again, very important, what if they have much more of a margin, which they can keep thanks to the reduction in duty, India will get a lot more allocation.
Absolutely.
Right now, we don't get allocation. We are way down the priority.
You don't make money here.
Because we don't make money here. So they'd say, hey, listen, why should we give you cars when, other markets are there where we can have much fatter margins, more volumes, and we make a lot more money.
Absolutely.
So I think this will kind of, let's say, in a way, to get more allocation of products over here. I remember the one car which I really think we missed out on was the 911 Dakar. I mean, at that time, India wasn't that big for Porsche. They were doing about 200-300 units, must be very small margin. And India got no allocation.
So I mean, expensive to sell here.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a car I really would have wanted. The 911 Dakar, it was just absolutely sold in small volumes. I think it just made 2,500, but India got no allocation at all. So, we miss out when you are a low margin, low volume market for these top end of brands. So we're talking about the imports. I think that's the ones which are going to be the maximum impacted one way or another, because clearly there's no manufacturing, there's no CKD, which kind of then moves out of the ambit of the duty benefit, because as we said earlier, it's a very low duty when you start localizing over here. But you know what I think brands should do? They should at least give a guarantee that there will be no reduction in price for the next 18 months. Or at least 15 months. Because right now, the only way the prices are going is up. Because with the euro going up, the duties are where they are. I think even Mercedes, all have said that every quarter they're increasing prices by 2%.
Correct. So I think I see it in 3 phases, Hormazd. The next 18 months to 24 months, there's going to be, if anything, prices are likely to go up. Mercedes-Benz has in fact declared that their quarterly price increase of 2% is definitely going to be par for course. Because the EU FTA gets implemented only in 2028. Then comes the phase of 2028 when the new duty cycle comes in. At that point in time, one needs to see what the rupee EU equation is. If the rupee EU equation worsens, then potential price benefit that the Indian consumer get is going to be much lesser. And then the third phase, and which is where I think it's more of a long-term game rather than being opportunistic. I think what India as a manufacturing system wants to do is plug into the EU manufacturing system. Eventually, what we are going to see is that India is part of a global value chain, and probably you'll have, cars made out of India making their way into the EU market, and a lot of CBU, CKDs, and potentially you may even see a luxury car being produced in India and being exported to select markets.
Absolutely.
Hormazd, while the conversation of India-EU FTA was going on over the last few years, at least from the vendor ecosystem that I've heard, both Mercedes-Benz and BMW have explored potential of exporting cars from India.
So, in fact, one model which will have, let's say, a potential for global export.
Exactly.
So very, very high volume of a particular model.
Exactly. So can India take responsibility of select right-hand drive markets?
Right.
Can India take responsibility of surrounding regions?
Right.
Why not? And if India has cost benefit, so probably, those are the kind of things you may start seeing post 2030, post 2032. And if India's EV supply chain and value chain becomes better, who knows? Eventually, we may start seeing models, the mainstream car maker models, being produced out of India and being sent to EU and other parts of the world.
Right.
So, and even bigger. I think, we keep talking about India being the last man standing when it comes to ICE.
I think that's a huge opportunity for us. And, I think, honestly, some of the ICE powertrains which we have here are absolutely world-class. At the bottom end, I always rate the Stellantis 1.2 turbo petrol over here, which is really phenomenal. Gold standard. This is the absolute, a big global production base over here.
Absolutely.
Mahindras, I think honestly, in their 2-liter, their 2.2 diesels, genuinely very, very good, world class. Of course, diesel doesn't have much of a market, but there are still some small markets.
Some markets
could be there, and in Southern Europe, the 2-liter petrol as well, the gasoline, and they can be hybridized or whatever. So I think we can really make the most on being or let's say take the benefit of our ICE expertise and the penetration we still have.
Absolutely. So from a prospective buyer's perspective, Hormazd, next 18 months, In fact, we keep saying that, this is the best time to buy. There is a tremendous tailwind that we are seeing with regards to GST benefit, and automakers are actually sweetening it further by making it more attractive. If anything, the European car makers will only make their cars more expensive. So this is the best time to buy. If at all any change happens in 28, depending on many equations.
And I think one important point which I forgot to mention, and I think we should talk about is, pricing is always strategic.
Absolutely.
It's not straightforward a percentage or, or the bottom of a Excel sheet. You take that number out. So I think one of the reasons also why OEMs will hesitate to just suddenly slash prices, though however tempting it is, it will ruin the residual value. It will ruin the brand value.
Absolutely.
And I think today residual value is a very, very strong factor for a lot of these brands, and so I think clearly, again, just to sum up the imports, I think what's clear is that next 18 months, even 2 years, nothing is going to happen.
Right.
If at all, the prices will only go up with the euro. When that 110 becomes 40, we'll see where the euro is.
Right.
We'll see what, again, there are quotas also, which cars are going to be part of that quota, which are not. So a lot of fine print. So there's really no certainty that, prices will come down dramatically.
And the market that is getting affected, Hormazd, we are talking about, about 5,000 to 10,000 only?
That's right. 5,000 to 10,000. But those 5,000 to 10,000 are, let's say for certain dealerships, they live on those brands.
I agree with you.
And that really, there's a big worry for them. But I think, if I was to buy a luxury car, I would, let's say, if it's a CKD car, I absolutely wouldn't even think twice about it. And clearly, if it's a CBU, by the time you kind of, you'll get a sense in the next couple of months which way the prices are also going, to kind of figure out, what the kind of price trajectory is.
Absolutely. So at the top end of the market, the 5,000 odd market, the impact we'll start seeing, the potential significant impact maybe on that market, which is CBU, where 110 becomes 40, and depending on where the rupee moves, the prices may be significantly high. Then we move to the CKD part, where already...
before that, I would say by 2032, when it becomes 10%, then I think we will see a definite benefit. And I don't think the rupee is going to devalue that much. Hopefully not.
And way India is plugged into the global economic environment is going to change. So I think it's not going to be a one-way journey for sure. Things will definitely.
And I think price corrections are going to be gradual, because as we ease into this, so I think there's going to be nothing dramatic or drastic.
Absolutely. So, from the cream of the market, which is the Rolls Royces, the Bentleys, the Lamborghinis, to more Ferraris, to more, where CKD, again in CKD, like you mentioned, Hormazd 16.5 comes to 8.5. So no major change there. Let's come to the mainstream market, Hormazd. The European brands account for just about 4% of the market. Right?
Yeah, so I think, for the mainstream brands, actually, I think it's a good opportunity, because you've got certain models which are, as CBUs, they are too expensive, but as CKD, they are too low volume.
Right.
Kind of caught in between. I mean, classic example is the Skoda Superb.
Yeah.
Now it came in as a CBU, the earlier generation one, for some 55, 60 lakhs. Yeah.
Insane.
And it just didn't sell.
Yeah.
So it was...
They only had select batch because they could not make money.
It was a total disaster. Now imagine that under a lower duty ETF. Then it will make sense.
Absolutely.
To get these cars in that sweet spot of 35, 40 lakhs. Again, we're talking small volumes here, looking at the overall size of the industry. Again, cars like, let's say, another car that bombed badly was the Nissan X-Trail.
Yes.
Because Nissan also stupidly did a cost plus kind of a pricing strategy. So realizing that they should have been strategic and sold it at something competitively. And at the end, they gave the car at a total discount to Big Boys Toys, who put some leather seats as bigger screen and sold it off. So it was really stupid what they did.
Right.
So you get these examples, which are actually good cars. X-Trail actually is a really good car but not at whatever.
At 60, that price.
Yeah, 60 lakhs. It's good at 35 lakhs.
Right.
So this whole... I think there are a lot of cars in this segment, and for, let's say, the premium brands, you can get the Skoda bringing in, as I said, the Superb. You can get Volkswagen, with the Golf, which is still quite expensive. It can be even cheaper. They'll have more volume of that.
Yeah.
You can get Honda, which is looking at the Prelude. It could come in this form. So I think all these mass premium brands which have models which are just too expensive or just not worth it, or value not seen in the pricing they come at. If they come at a lower duty, there could be more, let's say, there could be a lot of benefit for them. More models in the range. And, as it is, these guys are all struggling right now.
Absolutely.
So though this won't add a lot of volume, I think it will at least flesh out the range.
Absolutely.
And, let's say, make the business more appealing for the dealers.
The two biggest benefit there, we get diversity of models and we get higher allocation.
Yeah.
So at least, India is definitely going to see a deluge, if I'm not over exaggerating here, in terms of getting variety of models across vehicle makers, because it just makes a lot more sense to kind of bring them into Indian market, build your brand, and you get higher allocation. So clearly the premiumization trend, which is growing, it'll further accelerate in the Indian market.
Correct.
But when it comes to mainstream market, Hormazd, we've seen Renault. We did a podcast on Duster. They have big plans for India.
Renault is another, let's say, company which, you can get, Megane, exactly, cars like that, which again don't make sense at full duty.
Absolutely.
Because it's got a Renault badge on it.
Right.
But it makes sense with a reduced duty. So there's a lot that can be done that way. But I think, Ketan, talking about, we're getting into the mainstream brands right now. I think what we have to understand is that the one real key to, let's say, protecting our industry over here are the quotas.
Yes.
I think, what is it, 250,000?
250,000 units.
Yeah. And I think that, from what I understand, has been the biggest bone of contention, because this whole EU-India FTA for the last, almost 20 years or whatever. Whatever. The biggest fight has been automotive. Europe has been pushing for India to open up its auto industry. And, just imagine a scenario when there are no quotas. Yeah. If there were no quotas, when it goes to 10%, it doesn't make sense for European manufacturers to have a factory here.
Yeah.
You can just produce in Europe where there's overcapacity.
Absolutely.
Huge overcapacity. Workers are being laid off. It would be cheaper to shut the plant over here and produce there, pay the 10% and launch it over here.
Absolutely.
But I think very cleverly, India has foreseen that situation and put these quotas there. Otherwise, we could become like South Africa.
Absolutely.
If you see South Africa, there's been no investment in manufacturing because there's no duties on imports.
Absolutely.
So there's no manufacturing at all. So I think the key really are the quotas.
Absolutely.
And I think what's not there, what I believe is there in the fine print, there are quotas on manufacturers and even quotas on specific models.
Yes.
So, for example, if certain models doing well, you can have quotas on that as well.
There's a capping.
Yeah, there is a capping. Yeah, exactly.
So there's no undue advantage, so to say.
And right now, if you see what is the quota, it's about a very small percentage, isn't it? Yeah. So 250,000.
Yeah. 250,000 is the number. And the other interesting part, Hormuzd, is the country of origin, right?
Yeah, that's right. Country of origin. I think that's one way to keep the Chinese guys out. So if they make in Europe, they can't just
bring their cars from Europe into India at lower.
Exactly. So what's interesting is, let's say the Defender, Land Rover Defender. It's a UK-based company, but they've got production in Slovakia. So how does the country of origin rule apply over there? And we've even got a India-UK FTA. So I don't know how it will work.
No, we're all waiting for blueprint, Hormuzd. To me, the biggest exciting factor is the mainstream car makers. Skoda, we've spoken about the brand in the past. They're not there in China. They're not there in US. They're not there in Russia. Now, Skoda has to expand. They've been talking to various people for partnership. Now, this all of a sudden opens up a big opportunity for the next 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
Now, do they really need a partner? Again, a big question mark. But clearly, the terms of trade and the manufacturing cost in India all of a sudden become a lot more attractive. Now, we know for sure that management has already approved the budgets for India. It was just about, releasing those budgets. Now, something like this happens, you'll probably see a big commitment coming in from Skoda.
Right.
Renault, you were there with the global management.
Right.
I saw your interview with Mr. Cambolev.
Yeah.
Very upbeat about India.
That's right. Yeah.
Stellantis, they've just announced their next phase with Jeep and
Exactly.
a Citroen brand. So clearly, they export large,
Yeah, Stellantis could be another company where a lot of attractive
propositions.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even when the EVs come in, something like an Avenger, which could be attractive as a CVU.
Absolutely.
In 2032. So, and it's not really a long way off, because let's be honest, in our in this industry, 5 years is a blink of an eye.
Absolutely.
Because it's not even one life cycle.
Absolutely.
You do, let's say you measure time in life cycles of products, it's not even one life cycle.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think clearly it's in a way just round the corner.
Absolutely. All the planning for 2030 begins now.
Exactly.
And hence the portfolio that is going to come post 2030 with the clarity of EU FTA emerging. I mean, the exciting time is going to be 2028 to find out as to what cars are going to be made here, what cars are going to be exported from here, and what cars are going to come into the Indian market. So really exciting. And Hormazd, while we are talking, there's also this interesting prospect of India-US FTA, right?
That's right.
I mean, could we see, right now, whatever Donald Trump has gone on.
He wants the cars to come in at 0%.
0%. Now, I'm not too sure. I mean, we've not heard from the Indian administration as yet. But at 0%, if it turns out to be true, it just opens the floodgates for Tesla, for Ford, for GM to come into the Indian market. I mean, we are in an era of real disruption.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, it's not going to be zero. I doubt it will be, because I think one thing India has done in all our negotiations is really protect the automotive industry. But I think this time they've really done a good balancing act. And honestly, what we've not talked about, Ketan, is the huge opportunity now Indian OEMs have again in Europe.
Absolutely.
Clearly, we are not quite there yet. And that's really the sad part about it. None of our cars today can really go in and flood their markets over there. They don't have that kind of, let's say, pull or appeal. But I think there's a great opportunity for, let's say, Indian OEMs to really kind of, let's say, expand and look at Europe.
Absolutely.
I mean, typically they could start looking at, Southern Europe, where people are a little bit more price conscious.
Spain,
more rural areas, Spain, Italy, Portugal, Eastern Europe as well. I mean, cars like the Dacia Duster, which is quite a basic car, did very well. But the only difference is you have to come there with solid engineering as hygiene.
Absolutely.
In India, it's you come with features as hygiene, and then, the engineering can be okay.
Absolutely.
But it's the other way around.
Right.
So they'll have to really kind of, raise their game. And that's fantastic, because then even Indian consumers can benefit, when they raise their game to kind of go into these export markets.
Absolutely.
So I think, there's, I think absolutely there's nothing like a little bit of competition when the barriers come down. And, having been isolated and protection and this protectionist kind of policies really hasn't spurred let's say quality products or let's say products that can be
match the global standards.
So I think it's really a very, very exciting time. And I think companies like Mahindra, Tata are really well poised just now, because if you see their development curve and the way they have actually progressed in terms of technology, I think now this is the right springboard for them to really now focus on the global markets.
Absolutely.
Especially when they have, let's say, a treaty like this. Obviously, we'll get duty benefits in Europe as well.
Yeah. And to me, the most interesting part is it's very hard for Mahindras and Tatas to compete on ICE. But when it comes to EVs, we've seen new brands emerging, and we know for sure that both the companies have already expressed their interest to make their way into the global market. And with the new gen Born EV architectures, Mahindra, when they unveiled their concepts in 2022, they had said that UK is one of the key markets that they look at. So I've already seen development work beginning on the right-hand drive, probably for the UK market, and eventually we'll start seeing LHD going into the European market as well. But it is going to be quite challenging, given the fact that the Chinese are
massive. Chinese, I think now 5% market share in Europe. So I think it's going to be really tough. Let's not underestimate them or beat our drum too hard, because clearly Indian OEMs right now compared to the Chinese or the EVs are just way behind.
Absolutely.
A lot of catch up to do. But at least now we have the impetus to kind of, let's say, take that step and not just focus on our little bubble, which is the domestic market.
Absolutely.
It's time to go abroad, time to go global, and, let's say, really make the Indian automobile industry more widespread on the planet.
And to be honest, this be it UK FTA, be it EU FTA, or be it the US FTA, the most heartening part is India is very well plugged into the global ecosystem.
Yeah.
We're going to be exposed to technology, products, features, and
I mean, if you take our supplier base, we are truly global. I'm just supplying everywhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that is really global and world class.
Yeah. Interestingly, we export 6 billion euros worth of components.
Right.
Though we import 6 billion euros. So we are even keel there. But clearly opportunities open up, and we've seen that Indian component makers are daring now and acquiring companies. Every second, third month, we hear of Motherson Sumi acquiring some company around the world.
Yeah.
Bharat Forge in the past has acquired companies. Sona Comstar is becoming big globally. So, that opens up India to a global ecosystem. And exactly how you mentioned from the vehicle maker's perspective, even from component maker's perspective, we are raising the bar on the tech, on the quality. Our cost always has been the biggest advantage. So that's the most exciting part for me, that, we're going to be exposed to the developed world, and we're going to be staking the claim in a very hard world, and we're going to get better with that.
And, you're talking about acquisitions. I wouldn't be surprised if you had one top Indian OEM also looking at global acquisitions now.
Absolutely.
Because with this trade deal, there's a lot of free flow of knowledge, IP, products,
Absolutely.
technology, everything. And it could be that, acquiring, let's say, a company which has all that know-how is the fastest way to acquire it.
We've already seen that, Hormazd, in two-wheeler space, Bajaj acquiring KTM.
Exactly.
We've already seen in the commercial vehicle space, Tata's acquiring
Iveco.
Iveco. Of course, Norton is a much smaller brand, but TVS has Norton.
That's right.
Hero has been on the lookout for partnership for a while. And clearly, we are daring than ever we've been before. So it's a good time to be in, and we are on all categories. Third largest car market, largest two-wheeler ICE market, largest three-wheeler market, fourth largest commercial vehicle market. Now, clearly we're beefing up on scale, and our ambitions is now global.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think really it's exciting times ahead. I think, the prospects in the next 5 years, clearly in terms of choice, what's going to be available is going to increase dramatically. Whether prices will come down, that really remains to be seen. But I think what's very clear that, you'll get a lot more choice. They'll get a lot more, let's say, scale in the industry. And that's really what is very critical for companies to really survive in this market. So I think in a way it's good news that, all the players right now will be doubling down to see how they can benefit from this. And in the end, the consumers too will benefit. And one thing for sure is that it's highly unlikely that there will be any price reduction in the next 18 months. If at all, you might see some benefit in 2028. But then again, it all depends on which way the rupee goes. So, well, that's it from us from Deep Drive. Do hope you enjoyed watching this. And to make sure you don't miss any of our podcasts, click on the bell icon. You can also catch us on our other podcast platforms, Apple and Spotify. Thanks for watching.